Item 5C, Ms. Sansel.
So that's my question.
Yep.
If you
Yeah.
can just talk a little bit about what that process looks like, same or different across the board, and
Yeah, thank you.
Still
Commissioner-
learning.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandsted. Yes, part of our annual policy and process is to do performance reviews annually. And as we have in our management and compensation philosophy document is there is no guaranteed raises in a year. Everything's based on performance and results. And we have a standard template that we follow. The supervisor is the one that conducts the performance review of the person. And this process is very consistent with every other performance review we've done of the non-bargain positions within the utility, with the exception of everyone else has reported directly to me, so I did them, whereas in the case of Mr. Edwards, who's listed on here, Mr. Plumbaum, his direct supervisor, did the performance review for Dan. So.
Mr. Chair? And then is it, through this process, just going a little deeper, is this like your observations or their observations of an employee, or do they have a portion where they are critiquing themselves?
Yeah, so I'm more than happy to go in depth. Typically, the review process is an employee would rate themselves on a certain category, and then the supervisor rates them on that same category, and then overall, the scores are averaged out to create that end score, in which case the recommended increase is based on a targeted increase or no change in that case is based on salary bands that we have and variations of the midpoint of that salary band.
And then the final piece, if there was a massive discrepancy between how an employee views themselves versus how management were to assess their performance, is there a resolution process?
There is, within the process, like all performance reviews, I mean, we're all kind of rated daily in how we interact and things like that. So this is just one of the culmination of that in the year. There isn't exactly a dispute process just within the hierarchy structure we have. There's not. We do have a very collaborative arrangement, though. So, you know, there's usually no surprises when it comes to these evaluations. And I've often found, like all of the workers that we have are very self-critical. So everyone always rates themselves lower than the supervisor does in those cases. And you know, and let me just be clear too that we use the same process for people getting off probation as we do for people who have made it through probation as well. It's just that it's not very typical for somebody getting off probation to have an advancement in that time period. So, you know, that's more atypical. So the process is something that we continue to evolve and make more standard throughout. And I look forward to continuing to, now that we have a leader of the HR area in the organization, spending more time in finalizing and focusing on kind of ensuring consistency and more kind of routine check-ins throughout the year, that type of thing. But this annual goal setting and review process is a very important time, not for the raise that people expect to get, but for the discussion and that accountability back to the goals of the utility.
Okay, so it sounds like if there were a major dispute between how an employee saw themselves versus a management, they're stuck with the average score, essentially.
Essentially, yes. And, you know, I am not aware of many disputes in that process. And, you know, that's very good. And we're very lucky to have such a cohesive team, everybody pulling in the same way. I have taken on, just for perspective, we have hired an extraordinary amount of people in the last year. And I believe it's upwards of 20. You know, that's over the past 2 years. And if we exclude the summer students from that number, which we have, that's a lot. And you know, we do need to, as our organization expands from when I started, it was right around 70 to now we have just over 80 people here employed. You know, so too do our, you know, HR policies and things like that too. But the other work doesn't go away either. So I really appreciate the ability of folks to wear multiple hats, and we have a very robust team and lots of discussion throughout the utility on how to achieve the goals of the commission. But really, everyone feels that working for our utility ratepayers is the biggest honor of their lives, and I think it's very, very happy to have going on what we do. So.
Great. It sounds like this works pretty well. I would just like to see, maybe moving forward, I'll put it on the record, to consider the possibility of having some kind of a resolution process, should there be a major discrepancy. It doesn't sound like we've had one, which is great news,
Right.
but in the event there is, that there's a way forward, because all of that drives what comes next, essentially.
Right.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make the motion to approve item 5C with the recommendation that we continue to just monitor that process and possibly look at adding a conflict resolution process.
Okay.
I'd support that.
Motion by Commissioner Sandsted, support by Commissioner Bayless, to approve item 5C with the listed recommendations. Any further discussion?
Just real quick, Chair. Maybe next time too, if you could, because I kind of don't quite understand like what 5% midpoint band D, which equates to. Maybe if we could just get a straight up, like, here's what they're making now, here's what the new salary is. Because it's kind of confusing.
Sure.
What 9.9% of a midpoint salary band? I don't know if that's a 10% raise or if it's,
Sure.
is the individual only getting a $200?
Right.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair. I am chatty tonight, I apologize. Can you tell us a little bit about that band structure?
Vaguely, yes, although the specifics I'm not prepared to discuss here today, but vaguely, and it was included in the materials that the commission received I think we have 5 bands, and it progresses in basis as you go up. And the performance range is anywhere of up to 10% of the midpoint of the salary. 10% of the midpoint on that salary range is what's available for performance-based compensation in that band. So if you think about this can get very complicated, in particular because we're talking about people's income. It's also particularly challenging in a public environment, and not wanting to. Maintaining full disclosure while also being respectful of the nearing of confidentiality data that is always inherent within HR. But the process is to have the midpoints be the basis for the performance-based compensation within that salary bandwidth. So you'll also see that people that have been high performers, as they have kind of maxed out on that midpoint, it indicates it's time for a promotion or a raise up forward. And so that's kind of the natural progression in that. And
So in the spirit of being respectful, certainly not trying to discuss individuals' income by any means, but the structure, the pyramid structure, is that modeled by MMUA or by another? I mean, who else is using this? Or is this kind of a unique thing to our utility?
Every utility has a right and an obligation to decide its own compensation philosophy. But when setting the salary bands, MMUA and APPA ranges were consulted. And now this was put forward last year in December of 2022, and as kind of we need a documented structure to go through this, and it was at that time also presented as somewhat a way to keep evolving as the needs of hiring have grown. But as we see that the results that we need as a utility, particularly if we go back to some of the strategic planning items that we have, we are going to need to have a very robust hiring process and, retaining employees and engaging employees. And, the certain groups, are responsible for the results of the utility. And we have very, very fortunate to have very great members of AFSCME Local 49 that are part of our overall, I'm sorry, Mark, I get the number mixed up, but that are part of the utility and have always been. It's very important. Also, the right balance with professional, with management staff, and overall, we need to be able to achieve the results the ratepayers need, and we're going to do that with our people. So it's very important and can't be underestimated. And I also look forward to continuing to benchmark and to have more strategic thought on exactly who's in our peer group, how are we comparing, what structures, how are we doing all that. That's more than what we can do today, but as you mentioned, this is something to continue to evolve, and I look forward to working with all of our staff to make sure it's very transparent and also rewards the results that we need for the future of the utility. So we are very much in growth mode, and I'll use we need to balance all those things to make sure our ratepayers continue to have low rates and a very stable utility.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we'll move on to financials and risk management. Item 6A, review and approve the December 2023 financial report. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Commissioners, ahead of you is the financials for the 12 months ended December 31st, 2023. And I just wanted to point out a couple of the highlights from the period. As you can see, we had an operating loss, as reported right now, of $447,000 of operating income for the four utilities. But we also offset that loss with some non-operating income in the forms of interest income and grants to bring our total net position change to $1.7 million of a profit or an improvement in net position for the utility, and that's compared with a loss of $1.2 million total in net position in 2022. So we have added about just almost $3 million of a net bottom line improvement to the utility in the last year. That said, these are all preliminary numbers pending final review of our auditors here in the month of April. But I'm very happy with the team, and if we could just put this in a graphic form, again, thanks to HPAT for the excellent assistance here. You can see the trajectory as we have had quite a bit of a change since the beginning of 2021, where we are on the first year not in the red for a very long time. So again, that is token of the people we have working here throughout the utility and the process changes we're doing to do that. Yes, we still have to improve that operating loss. There's a number of things that we're working on for 2024 to do that. Also, the non-operating income has been very helpful this year, and not to mention the grants that we've received as well. So huge improvement there, and look forward to continuing more of the same for 2024 and beyond. But it is hard work, as you can see. But this creates the stability that the ratepayers need to have trust and confidence in the utility. This allows us to continue to grow and expand and do so while keeping rates in mind.
I'll make a motion to approve the December 2023 financial report.
Okay. Support. Motion of Commissioner Sandsted, supported by Commissioner Bayless, to approve the December 23rd financial report. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6B, Hibbing Renewable Energy Center 2023 budget update. And let you take it from there, Mr.
Yeah,
Peterson,
thank you.
'cause
And
it's
it
changed
was a
little bit.
requested purchase. It was the end of that part, and I wanted to mention that, as we approved the capital budget back in 2024, one of the items was the boiler 2 superheaters. And the superheaters, for those working at home or watching at home, is on top of the boiler, there's this thing that looks like spaghetti, and it's a bunch of tubes. And it really does look like spaghetti because it's somewhat random and all over the place in a pile. But those are the tubes that make that recycle the heat and allow us to produce super hot steam without burning out the boiler. And so this is a needed project to ensure that the gas enhancements made to boiler 2 are working and not burning up our superheaters. We did have some opportunity to go out for a sole portion of this as a sole source, but we think it's in the ratepayers' best interest that we go out for public bid for the superheaters, just to ensure we're getting the best cost for our ratepayers. So with that in mind, I'd request the commission authorize public bid 2024-02 to go out for public bid to replace the superheaters in boiler 2.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
I'll make a motion to approve the call for a public bid 2024-02 for boiler number 2 superheater banks.
Thank you, Mr. Sandsted, and I'll support that. We have a motion by Commissioner Sandsted, support by Chair Hart, to approve calling for public bid for the superheater replacement. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6C, under substation improvement projects, the first item will be approve engineering recommendations on public bid 2023-24 distribution transformers to purchase 2 transformers from Virginia Transformers and 1 transformer from WEG Transformers in the amount of $1,667,000. Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hart. I might ask Mr. West to come up, and maybe Joe Peterson as needed. But ahead of you is our recommendation based on public bid 23-24. If you recall, we have 5 distribution transformers that are all at risk of massive failure, and we don't want to have the ratepayers' reliability at risk. For that, we are needing to replace these somewhat all at the same time, but we have prioritized 3 for right now just for the lead time. The lead time on these transformers is long, and so we have to plan ahead. We are recommending 2 different types. So, Mr. West?
Yeah, well, we'd like to implement the 3rd substation on First Avenue. That'll take some of the burden off of the other 2 substations that are 50-plus years old. We want to get 2 Virginia transformers because they have short lead times, so we can get the 3rd substation online quickly. And then the 2nd Virginia transformer would go to the Beltline substation, and the WEG would go to the gas plant.
So,
Answer your
yeah,
question?
that's perfect. And so if there's a variety of energy savings and profiles and risk balanced recommendation for this portfolio of transformers that we're recommending, and happy to open up any questions the commission might have.
I have a question. Thanks, Mr. Chair. It looks like there's 3 different items requested in this request. 2 transformers from Virginia. I'm assuming that's the city of Virginia? No?
That's the brand.
Okay, okay, the brand. Thank you for that clarification. For my own knowledge, this is, I'm learning. What is the average cost on like a Virginia transformer, and then the difference in cost or the cost of a WEG transformer?
On average, like across a product
Well, you're
line?
asking for 2 Virginia transformers. The total ask, inclusive of the WEG transformers, 1.667 million. Just to break down.
Yep. If I could, while Mike looks at his notes,
Sure.
maybe I'll answer
For
portion
the
of that.
public, how much does a transformer cost?
So we're buying 3, so 3 total transformers. The upfront cost of a Virginia transformer, not from the city of Virginia, but that's from that's the name of the company that makes them. So these are brand-new transformers, just so everybody knows. We're not buying used transformers here. The Virginia is $471,000. So it is lower cost upfront than a WEG transformer. The Virginia transformers also have a faster lead time. So it will come here in a year, and we should have this by late fall. And that's a really, really good thing to have. The WEG transformer is $725,000. So the WEG transformer is upfront more expensive. And the reason for that difference is of approximately $300,000 is due to the amount of copper in the core of the transformer. And that amount of copper is a direct relation to the energy efficiency of that transformer. So that over the lifetime, the WEG is cheaper, especially as energy costs increase over time. You know, we're using today's energy rates. So the flexibility that we have is we're going to have two very good transformers and one extremely efficient transformer that's going to be, as a whole, making a very reliable grid for our utility. And it's important to know that the upfront costs and the lifetime costs of the different transformers are different. And because we're managing the whole portfolio this way, this is, in our recommendation, the best interest to the ratepayer, because we don't want to risk not having that First Avenue substation while we're waiting for the ideal transformer to arrive. And this also provides us to get the projects initiated and started and going now, so that when these very good transformers arrive this fall, we'll be able to insert them, while as we're also building the right standard utility practices version over at the Beltline.
Mr. Chair, that answered my question almost in totality. I have one more thought. Life expectancy between the two different brands, similar? Would we expect more out of a WEG transformer?
I would say they both meet our specs, and I would expect them to last 30 to 40 years. The WEG seems like a more well-thought-out design. It has a little bit smaller footprint. So it's kind of like buying a locomotive or something like that. You buy the one that burns less fuel over, 20, 30-year life.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They both meet our specs.
Great.
But I do think the WEG is probably a better transfer.
Thank you.
Can I bounce off of that quickly?
Sure can.
I'm just, so what you're saying is it's a more efficient transformer, and the numbers make sense to buy that transformer versus just buying a third Virginia transformer?
Yes, because I don't think we can get all three in, this year. We're going to have to wait 2 years for the WEG. That's the real concern. We can get the Virginias in 40 weeks. So we really want to get a third substation online to take the burden off the gas plant and the Beltline.
Okay.
Yeah, these are very similar conversations to what we had as a team, how to really balance all of the potential risks that we have. And one of the biggest risks is imminent failure. And, that one, given the lead time on these projects, is substantial. Better to have more than a couple eggs in the basket, as we know they need to be placed. So in a perfect world, if timelines weren't impacted here, we would be requesting 3 WEG transformers. But we can't do that in good conscience, because we know we're going to need those other substations active and online prior when the WEG would arrive.
Yeah.
And also, the Virginias are a good transformer. Let's not,
Right.
mix that. It's just
Right.
there is some efficiency. And also with the Beltline is closer to the load center of the city right now, and that's why having the more efficient transformer closer to the load center will ensure that better approximates the gain in efficiency. And again, building these 3 substations or rebuilding them is a very important step. And I want the ratepayers at home to be aware too that these are big dollars, but this is the investment and reliability that the Public Utilities Commission has needed for many years. And so we're finally doing it. And we also are pacing our projects and getting enough engineering support so that we can have these constructed in as efficient as a time possible, so that we can have that immediate reliability. So we don't want the lights to go out. We need to make sure we have adequate substations for this. So.
Sure. Thank you.
Habits.
So, so just out of curiosity, you know, we have a 2-year lead time on the WEG, a 1 year on those 2 Virginias. What happens if there is a catastrophe at one of the substations? Like, how do we replace that transformer?
Can I take a simple response and then if you.
Yeah,
you know,
go ahead.
Let me try to do the simple explanation, and Mike will give you the engineering answer, which is, you know, very reliable. The simple answer is we can shed load around with potentially finding another transformer here. So each situation will be different, and we are planning for that. There is also a little bit of fingers crossed. Let's hopes nothing bad happens in a year, because, you know, having the new substation on First Avenue will be very helpful for our long-term grid reliability. I think that's the simple answer. And Mike, can you validate that, or?
Well, we do have a transformer just north of the plant. It's a spare for the interconnect substation. The footprint doesn't work, but if you had to get it in there, it might take a few days, but that's an option. You still have the plant generating, and you still have 307 feeders, 307 and 309. So, but if you had to go on the belt line and the gas plant, I mean, it should work, but they're near the end of life. I mean, you don't want to keep pushing your luck.
Inherently in Mike's response is that the grid is healthier in Hibbing when the power plant's generating. And, you know, that's one thing we've already activated to ensure that our grid is more resilient. If the power plant wasn't running right now, we would be taking 75% of our load off of the 307 feeder, which is the 2 mile, you know, so in that is where we'll be adding the new substation to help diversify load away from the plant. But you know, people could say, well, they're spending all this money on the power plant. Why does it, you know, what is it helping over here? Well, it's keeping our reliability up for the whole grid. Remember, our city was created as a power island back in the 1920s, and it was meant to be generating power in the plant, distributing it outward. Now that we've started generating over the last year and a half, we are actually able to make the grid more stable as a result. But long story short, there are contingency plans, and we just hope we never have to use them.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, are you looking for a single motion or a motion on each sub-item here, or do you want to handle item C with one motion?
I think we should just take one motion it's 1,660,000.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of 2 Virginia transformers and 1 WEG transformer in the amount of $1.667 million.
Support. Motion by Commissioner Sandsted, support by Commissioner Bailey, to approve the transformer purchase as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 6, still under item 6C, item number 2, reject all bids from public bid 2023-25 substation switchgear and approve the purchase of substation switchgear from Board of State Electric in the amount of $644,597.
Thanks, Chair. I can just introduce it, and any detailed questions. When we went out for bids, none of the providing public bids met our specs. So we did receive one bid, and that's one we are saying to reject because it doesn't meet our specs. We also have found there is only one substation that meets our specs, and that is provided by G&W Electric, for which the supplier is Border States Electric. We just for the record, would be known that this is a sole source purchase of that particular switchgear.
There is a typo, excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The lead time from Border States Electric is 40 weeks.
Okay. 41 weeks, you said?
40
weeks. I'll make a motion to move forward with the switchgear purchase. There's support.
Support.
Motion by Chair Hart, support by Commissioner Babich to move forward with the switchgear purchase in the amount of $644,597. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item will be to reject all bids from public bid 2023-26 voltage regulators and approve rebidding as public bid 2024-01 voltage regulators. Mr. Peterson?
Well, thank you, Chair Hart. As the letter and recommendation is, we received one bid last year, and we feel that rebidding is appropriate here because of when our bid horizon, we were bumping up against the holidays and things like that, and some additional conversations that our engineering team has had would indicate that there is appetite for some of those bidders to submit other proposals. So we feel that this is in the best interest of the ratepayers, just to reject all bids from PB 2023-26 and rebid as public bid 2024-01.
Mr. Chair? Question for council. Any concerns about doing this?
Commissioner Samstad and members of the commission, in the bid packages that the utility sends out, the utility always has the right to reject all bids because the general manager with the advice from his staff is saying, we think there's a better way to do it. I would recommend you follow the general manager's recommendation and reject the bids because they're really thinking they're probably going to get a better price or a better options if they rebid it.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to reject the bids and approve the rebid.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Commissioner Stanstead to approve rejecting the bids for the voltage regulators and calling for a new bid. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Before we adjourn, is there any old or new business anybody has? Not, there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll support that. Motion by Commissioner Bayless, support by Chair Hart to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody.